Before we walk into today's talk, there will be points later on where there's going to be some tools or technology on screen. You're welcome to take a photograph if you want to at the very end. I'm going to have a URL up where you can grab this entire deck. I'll also post it to the Slack channel if any of you have joined, so you can grab it from there as well. But once again, thanks for everybody for coming into this room to kind of close out the day. There's one more talk after this one. Really excited to see that as well. And without further ado, we'll just dive right in. So I'm Levi Neuland. I am the Senior Vice President of Digital Marketing at the Martin Group. We're an advertising agency here in Buffalo, about 20-something years old. We are in Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, and New York City, so we just spread ourselves across New York State. I oversee teams internally and focus on a number of different things. Overall digital marketing strategy, which is, the upfront planning, how we connect the dots between different tools, as well as the back-end reporting. Team that's focused on web design and development, and then a team that's probably most relevant to this talk that's focused on our social media and content efforts. So I've had an opportunity to work there for the past 10 years for a bunch of local, national, global clients, which has been really exciting. But in putting this deck together, I realized I've been doing this for close to 20 years at this point, which that makes you feel a little bit old, but it does allow for a little bit of nice self-reflection. So I was thinking about some of the cool brands I've had a chance to work with. It's not saying these were always clients I worked with, but brands I've had a chance to touch. So everything from sneakers to vacuum cleaners to toys to ice cream. I have never worked in a space where I've really been so narrow of working in one particular industry, which has been kind of nice because I had a chance to build websites, entire ad campaigns, augmented reality applications to sell sneakers to children. That kind of stuff can be really cool and interesting. And if anybody here that has worked in an agency, you know that no week is like the week before it, and things are always in flux. But through this, I've had a lot of opportunity to work with clients to help solve their problems, which ultimately is some of what we're going to be talking about today. Anytime I've had an opportunity to give a talk, I don't tend to grab an old deck, dust it off, put it up, sell the company and say, hey, here's what we do. In fact, if our creative team saw anything in this deck, they'd probably say, this is horribly off-brand. What are you doing? This is not your space. This wasn't approved, which is why I didn't tell them any of this. So, but in thinking about what I was going to do for this presentation, I always like to think about, what conversations we're having internally at the agency, what conversations we've had with our clients or with my other peers that don't work at my company about what we're seeing, what big questions we have about what's kind of happening next. And content is definitely something that's been very top of mind. So it does beg the question of why does content matter even more right now? Based on my perspective of things, attention spans keep getting smaller because of the amount of stuff that's out there and how it's being served to us. Not to mention the internet's has always been a weird place. It's gotten a little bit more darker, combative, caustic. A lot of people are honestly just unplugging because they're like, this is just better for my mental health, which is a total fair take to have. However, I do think that an element of authenticity and building community could potentially help counteract some of this negativity that we have by helping people, helping reach people, I guess, in a way that resonates with them, so they feel a connection with what you're communicating and brings them into the fold, so that it's not a giant social network that we're necessarily focused on anymore, but smaller pockets of communities are going to start to crop up of where you like having these conversations. That has its own challenges in regards to being an echo chamber and things like that. But that's kind of where I see some of the trends going, of people wanting to be a little bit more insular and enclosed networks versus dealing with the fire hose that is TikTok. So thinking about kind of why content matters in respect to kind of what we do as an agency on behalf of our clients, on average, Americans spend about 4 hours watching content. So that's between social media and streaming platforms, which is about 16% on an average day. And that's also including sleep time. So, that'd be even higher if you consider waking hours, which is a lot of time. So when people are consuming content or choose to watch something on streaming or go on social media, that is a good opportunity to reach them and communicate with them for whatever reason you choose to. So the purpose of today's talk isn't going to be walking through any deep tutorials. I don't believe there's any charts throughout the entire thing or step-by-step processes. It's going to be a lot of guidance on some thought starters on how you can make content easier for you by hopefully getting past some of the barriers that we all kind of have maybe artificially put into place as to what we need to do to be successful. My hope is that you're not necessarily, I know for a fact, you're not going to look at everything that's in here and say, oh, I'm going to do all of that. But my hope is you're able to take maybe 1, 2, 5, a dozen things, step away from this and apply that in the weeks and months to come to say, oh, that's something I should be thinking about or doing a little bit better as I move forward. So without further ado, that wasn't actually the presentation. Now we're starting. How to make content easier. How do we do that? So I wanted to kind of start with this. In the amount of time you've been at ColorCode, 24 years of video content to watch has been added to YouTube. 24 years. By the end of today, it's 82 years. So a human life's worth of video has been added to YouTube, which makes you feel something, right? Right in the middle, it's like, oh, that's a lot. And at first, when I kind of started digging these stats, I was like, okay, I'm kind of terrified, but also I'm like, well, why am I sweating so much about what I'm making then? Because anybody that happens to see it in itself is kind of a blessing. And it's like, okay, I need to just focus on the person I know is going to be there. It does mean there's obviously competition and things like that to deal with, but the volume is so vast that you don't necessarily have to get too caught up in this belief that maybe your one thing is going to be the thing that saves all of the world's problems. And from my perspective, we really do have this idealized view of what it should be. We consume content, we see things we like, and we think, oh, I need to be this to be successful at what I do. But that bar is being raised too high in a lot of cases, where the reality is we don't need to go that high up to have the content that we're creating do the appropriate job that we need it to do. We're all guilty of kind of also getting in our own way then, of saying like, oh, I really got to do these things, I really got to push things forward and got to really hit this threshold and be just like all these other folks I'm seeing. But a large percentage of probably what you think you need to do just doesn't really need to happen. And the content can actually be as easy as you want to make it, always assuming it's still doing the job that you needed to do at the end of the day. Based on the research that I've done, the 3 core areas that kind of most folks have issues with when it comes to actually making content and making that content process easier surrounds consistency, quality, and scale. And those are the 3 core things we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this presentation. There really is no one-size-fits-all solution, though. So while we're going to be talking about these topics, some things might apply to you, some might not. Some of the folks in this room create content for yourself. Some on behalf of the company you work for, others might create it for clients. There's obviously a lot of different scenarios, depending on who decision makers are. Some things are non-negotiables, but there is a lot more flexibility than I think you might all believe in what you're producing. So what we're going to focus on is those topics, but I'm also going to give you permission throughout all of this to kind of take what you want from it and kind of do what you think is going to be right for you. I'm sure coming into this, you've all heard things over the years from particular gurus about growth hacks, things like that, your favorite creators saying this is what you have to do to be successful, but just don't let that ideal perfection get in the way of any progress you're going to be making as you kind of look to ramp up your content efforts. But before we can get into all that, we have to unfortunately have a funeral for all of the excuses we've all been making as to why we're not producing content in the moment or we're not making that a priority. First and foremost, I'm sure everybody in here has kind of had that feeling of, oh, I'd like to do something about this, but oh, I'm really just not an expert in it. There's people out there that know so much more than me. But the reality is the people that probably know most about any given subject probably not committing all of their time to posting stuff online. They likely have some better things to be doing. Some of them might be, though. A lot of the folks you see online that you might perceive as being an expert are really just the ones that are out there the most. They're talking about it the most. They're getting out there, getting their voice heard. They're the loudest voice. So you perceive them as being an expert because they are associated with that particular topic or subject matter they talk about. Interesting thing about that is then if they say something that's an opinion, that can sometimes transform into fact. Like, oh, you have to do this because Mr. Beast said it. That's not what you do, so it's okay. You can veer away from what some of that guidance is and say, okay, this is maybe what I should be doing instead. So instead of worrying about being an expert, biggest piece is just saying, hey, I want my voice to be part of the conversation, even if it's quiet and small right now. And that can start to build yourself up to be perceived more as an expert in a particular space as you move forward. Number 2, I'm embarrassed to appear on camera. Not everybody likes to be front and center or be the voice of a particular brand or conversation, but the reality is you don't really need to be on camera to create content. While that personal side of it, telling your personal story, a face to the name and hearing your voice and seeing it can be very impactful and help you connect with your audience. There are thousands of accounts online that create faceless content where you never see a person. There's voiceover headlines using public available footage and imagery. And they are still getting views, they are still getting engagement, they are still selling product or doing whatever they need to do. So not being on camera isn't stopping them from moving forward. I'm not a master of insert any tool that you might think about. Thinking back to my history of kind of being in the marketing advertising world, I started developing web pages in Microsoft Front Page and designed them in Paint. Maybe that makes me really old. Actually, at the time, I just didn't have money to buy Photoshop. Even then, it was too expensive. Ultimately, any tool you have can be the right tool for the job. So don't let the idea of, oh, I don't know how CapCut works, so I can't hop. It's an excuse. You don't really need that. Anything that you have that can do the job at a certain level will help you get to that endpoint, and you can always ladder up from that later. I can't post daily. We hear that a lot on our side of things, of some of our clients feeling like, oh, I need to be out there posting 3 times a day and sharing all this stuff to stories. The reality is that the frequency of how much you're posting or what platforms you're posting to don't necessarily correlate to being successful or your content being quality. Sometimes actually trying to ramp up to posting an absurd amount of content just lowers the quality of everything across the board, and you're actually diluting what you're putting out there. Quality over quantity should always be a priority when you're starting and trying to ramp things up. And then finally, AI can do it better. AI capabilities will continue to replace certain aspects of the content creation platform. I see it as being more of currently an assistant, down the road probably more of a coordinator. Of some of those types of roles that you might need support on are the types of things that it can help with. Building your knowledge now on what makes your content work and how to execute can help you leverage AI to better do that job. There's some speakers earlier today throughout that have definitely mentioned how they use it to peel away the stuff that they are not that interested in doing, so they can prioritize more top tier work for where their efforts will have more impact. And that's something definitely to consider. So we're now going to dive into our first of the 3 topics, which is consistency. And without a foundation of consistency, what you're doing is going to be a one-off. Could you create a video this week? Yes. If you don't have a foundation of consistency, will you do that next week or the week after or the week after that? Probably not. I have a really interesting kind of case study to talk about here because consistency really impacted me ramping up to this ColorCode talk. Considering my talk about making content easier, you would think I would have posted something promoting this on social media, but I didn't. So the question is why? And the answer is Halloween. The reality is my social platforms, I don't post anything about work. I don't post anything about marketing. About once a year, me and my family dress up for Halloween and we photograph that and we put it on social. That's about all I do. So I have no consistent workflow of saying, oh, when I want to produce content, every Thursday I do this particular thing. Here's the app. None of that exists. I have no foundation. So while I might have had some best of intentions of saying, yeah, I should make something, that didn't come to fruition because, I just did not have that base to really work with. So how do you start ramping up your consistency? Ultimately, I wasn't going to magically find time with a toddler at home to make some content. It just wasn't going to happen. You don't find time, you make the time. And once that time is made, you need to hold that space and commit it to focus on that particular task. If you don't do that, you might have some short-term success, but it will guaranteed fall off over time. That's also a quote from my grandma that she told me back in the day, so I always think about it. But I didn't want to put a picture of her up here, Got enough weird photos coming up, and I don't want to mix my grandma into that. It just seems inappropriate. Now, once you kind of have that space carved out, what do you make? Start by creating the smallest thing possible. For that Halloween shoot, realize that was a newborn, a few months old in that photo, my son. And we were very sleep deprived. Having a newborn's boring but tiring. And we're like, oh, we always do a Halloween photo. It'd be really good to do one. So our expectation was we want one photo to post. That's about as small as we could get, is saying we just want a photo that looks okay to get out into the world. And if we did that as a success, since our expectations were low and our scope was very, very narrow, the more we got out of it, the happier we were. The fact that we got multiple good photos, we're like, oh, this is great. We didn't even think we'd get this far, which is amazing. But along with that, we had to be realistic and resist the urge to make the content too complex or involved. The Halloween photo was made with literally what we had in the house. I think it was like 6 p.m. one random day, and we're like, we should take a photo. Okay, what should it be? Grabbed clothes from upstairs. We had a floodlight in the yard that was multicolor that made the room red. That was our living room. We just turned some furniture around and shot it on an iPhone. We added a few things here or there, but also we didn't reach beyond our kind of capabilities. Could I have attempted to hang upside down from the ceiling and look like a vampire bat? Yes. Would I be here to give this talk today? Probably not. And that photo definitely wouldn't have gotten up. It would have been probably my funeral. So luckily, we kept that scope pretty small, and we were realistic about what was possible, which made all of that possible. Not saying you can't reach beyond what you're capable of, but keep yourself in check and to say, what do I really think I can accomplish in this? Because you're going to further your ability to have success in that. Next, the expectation that something might not go out the door can lead to a lot of frustration and really bad decision making of like, oh, I need to make this work. If this doesn't work, the world ends. I don't know about all of you, but post 2020, I realized how little mattered regarding a bunch of things that I did in my life. So maybe I've just become a little bit more zen and just like, you know what? We're doing the best we can. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. But ultimately, if you try to do something and it fails, and that was your expectation of it, I am going to have this done, it's going to happen. It could sour you on doing things moving forward. Even if you have the time carved out and you're keeping your ideas small and it keeps failing and you're just like, well, I'm not producing anything, you're going to give up at the end of it. So if you go into creating content with the expectation you might not have an end product worth posting, that's okay. It's actually kind of freeing because what you're more focused on is the creation process. If it ends up being something you love and you're like, let's put it out there, great. If it's something you don't like, it's definitely a learning experience. Well, why didn't this work? Was I not capable of doing it? Did I not plan correctly? Do I not have the right tools? What exactly got in my way? Which then makes it so the next time you're creating, you're using those learnings and moving forward and saying, okay, here's how I can do this differently this time to make it work. And finally, once you've already successfully carved out time, started creating things small and being realistic about it, and you're comfortable with it posting or not, it needs to become part of your regular routine. So I talked earlier about carving out that time and making sure you're continuously doing that is now this next piece. Because we know that repeating the process helps build up expertise, confidence, and makes the possibility of creating much, much easier. So to help people out to kind of think of maybe where to start if you're not doing any of this so far, I created little starter kits for each of these things. First and foremost, for consistency. Set aside time each week for content creation. Try to make it the same day, same time if you can, same amount of time. Make it a little sacred space for doing something towards creating content. Plan to make one final thing per month. That's about as small as you can get. I think everybody in this room could make one thing a month if they dedicate the time to it. Keep it small and realistic. Don't try to reach beyond your current capabilities. The nice thing is through that repetition, you will gain more experience and that ability to keep expanding what you're doing. And then I give you permission not to post it anymore, especially if you're doing all this for yourself. Just don't tell anybody you're doing any of it. If it doesn't go out, nobody knows. But you did learn some things about what to do next. And tools can definitely help move some of this forward. I do find that having an app that kind of helps you build up habits can be a super great place to start from to get started with regular content creation, as well as if you're going to start to create content, using planning and tracking tools to kind of organize everything, map out your to-dos can be super helpful as well. Next subject is quality. I don't know about you, but I am my own worst critic. About 15 minutes after I've completed something and it's out in the world, I hate it completely. Now, everything I hate about what I make, any sane person would have no issue with. It's really a me thing. But I just have this expectation of what could have been and where I would want to go. Oftentimes, not for any good reason. So let's talk about what's actually important in respect to quality. So thinking about this, and I sometimes jokingly do karate at home, and I was like, oh, I could get like a headband and get a gi and look like the Karate Kid and do crane kicks and stuff. But I also then just realized, oh, wait a minute, I can just wear pajamas and do karate just the same. That whole idea of like the performative aspect of like, oh, I need the things to actually get to the output can sometimes be a blocker from helping you make progress in actually improving the quality. It's important to try to consider new tools, but work ultimately with what you have first before you try to move things forward. So maybe someday if I get good enough at living room karate in my pajamas, I will eventually look like the Karate Kid because it helps me further, but not a great place to start. So ultimately what I'd recommend doing is every piece of software you're using today is probably getting new features every single week, every single month. Things are constantly evolving. you probably haven't looked at all of them recently, or you've seen release notes and you're like, oh, that seems cool, I'll look at it later. Dive into existing documentation, tutorials, dig into YouTube about what some of these new things are, and maximize what your current tools are doing, because there are going to be hidden features that help you up the quality of what you're producing that you are just not tapping into. And they could be things that make you realize, oh, I've been working 10 times as hard for the past 5 years of my life, which once you get past that, you'll just be happy to have those new features in your life. So one thing that I hear a lot from clients, and even sometimes from our creative arm, is like wanting to make things look and appear as best as possible. So thinking about this in context of kind of like shooting video, if having things in 4K HDR, highest resolution is the biggest indicator of quality, why has the sales of old digital cameras and camcorders boomed in the last 5 years? Why? Because the aesthetic's nice and people just like the way it looks and feels. Because the reality is, online, organic is something that people engage with. They don't necessarily need something slick to get into it. It's more natural, it feels more authentic, and sometimes when they see something that's a little bit too polished, they feel like they're being sold to, or it feels disingenuous for what they want to do. It's like, oh, that's a brand or that's something else, I'm not as engaged. But the more natural something feels, the more likely they are to kind of step in and say, okay, I want to see a little bit more of this. There is a place for polished and high production values, but it's not something you need to chase to make your content successful in respect to quality. So how do we then focus on the parts of quality that matter? Quality is ultimately more about the impact that it has on the person viewing than being visually impressive. Like, is somebody going to say that a talk was quality because it had the most well-designed slides, or because they learned the most from it and they got the most out of it? So having a purpose behind your content is critical. Why is your video worth someone's time? Why should they care? I swear I say, why should I care about a bunch of things internally at work all the time of like, okay, this is great, but like, does this matter? Is this really impactful? And it's an important judgment to make on things to see whether you should continue moving forward or take a step back and recalibrate. But once you have a purpose, you then can think about the composition, which gets more into kind of some of the polish, some of the editing, some of that, what people commonly perceive as quality, of how that storytelling works to kind of provide the proper purpose around, proper kind of structure to communicate your purpose to your outside audience. So from a composition standpoint, that can be difficult to kind of latch onto. There's some folks that gave a talk earlier today that are more in the creative space, do video editing and all of that. Many of you are likely not there. You are not producing videos, motion graphics to kind of help cut and edit things together in strong storytelling. So how do you help build up your skills to be able to do that better? One of the best ways I've found to get a crash course on that is to really look at the videos that you love and engage with. So instead of looking at it as a consumer, rewatch it a dozen times. Pay attention to how it hooks you in. What was the first thing that you're just like, oh, I need to keep watching this? What happens at the beginning? What happens at the middle? What happens at the end? How do they transition between key points to make sure you're not bored and get carried along? What elements in the video kind of catch your attention that make you want to rewind or rewatch and say, oh, I need to see this again for some reason? Try mimicking those approaches for the content you're creating in small scale, and then experiment with what formats work best for what you want to be communicating. If you are looking to kind of up the quality and you feel like what you're putting out there maybe isn't professional enough, audio should always be your priority over video to start. Video with bad audio can actually represent the speaker in a poor light. People can feel like, oh, this person isn't good at this because the way they sound, the way they're being presented to me is just not good. Bad audio also decreases the likelihood that somebody's going to engage and could make somebody skip past, because if something just sounds not good, somebody's just going to keep moving. People are just more comfortable with lower quality video. It's probably because in the early days of the internet, video was trash online, but MP3s worked perfectly fine. We're all used to things buffering, and obviously it's gotten a lot better, but people just have an understanding of sometimes your internet's wonky and it's going to look weird, but if it sounds good, it can keep pulling them along maybe until things get a little bit better, or at least they're engaged in your story enough to not care about how it looks. Now, from a visual standpoint, before I'd even worry about going with a high-def camera or retooling any of that, lighting can honestly really rapidly change how things look. You even think about me standing here and I was thinking, oh, I'm very monochrome today. I am naturally a pale person. I love this blue light hitting me. Adds a little something, a little bit of character to make me pop. And representing your subject in a better light is very affordable. My first setup at home way back when for a green screen, I bought the green screen online. Everything else, the framing, the clips, the lighting, all came from Home Depot. And at the time, it wasn't very pricey. You know, I was very fresh out of school, doing stuff at home in the spare room in my apartment, just trying to make video content and things like that. And things have gotten a little bit more accessible and also more affordable with more features, which is great. Picking up a ring light or setting up a basic 3-point lighting is really not that difficult. And there's numerous tutorials online, regardless of how bad you think your setup is, that can help you solve those common problems to make sure that you're lit in a way that makes you more presentable to the audience. It makes it feel like, oh, I'm paying attention to what I need to be paying attention to in this clip. Scripts are something that, you know, can be a little bit divisive. They're a fantastic tool for ensuring that you get your key points across. However, reading from a script can come across as very stodgy and can feel inauthentic because, you know, you really want to sound as natural as possible. So while scripts can be good, I would recommend internalizing all of those key points and looking for ways to kind of put your own riff on it. Similar to this talk, do I have speaker notes? Yes. Am I following them one-to-one? Absolutely not. By knowing the content inside and out, I will come across as more effective in what I'm trying to communicate because it feels like I have ownership over what we have here. And if any of you have ever given a pitch and you've had to read somebody else's slides, you know it's the worst. Finally, for our quality phase is sometimes we know things go sideways completely. Like, especially with even the best possible planning, things don't work out. I know for ColorCode, we wanted really nice weather out. It's raining. We have to adapt. Things happen. But instead of getting frustrated when things go bad, think about how you can use it to your advantage. Bloopers can be used strategically to get people to pay a little bit closer attention, pull them along, and possibly even rewatch video. And even more importantly than that, behind the scenes footage is very popular. There's a person I follow, I believe, on Instagram who I think got her big boom dancing on TikTok. Her name's Kelly Dactyl, I believe. Did really intricate dance videos, which did tons of views. But over time, you know, that's kind of dropped off. The videos that do the most views for her now and get the most engagement, she does behind the scenes videos for everything she makes and then shows the final product. And the behind the scenes captures more people's attention because people love to see, you know, how the sausage is made. They love to see when things go right or go wrong and how people adapt. It's also, honestly, the behind the scenes is a little bit more humanizing than a cleanly packaged thing that gets distributed online. So messy isn't necessarily a bad thing if you use it correctly. So you can be okay with embracing a little bit of that as you move forward and don't feel like, you know, it's something that you have to kind of restart over or not publish something because of that. I'm sure some of the folks that have worked with editors before who have to fix something in post, mistakes always happen and sometimes you do have to do some course correction, but from my perspective, as far as like online content goes, you can embrace those mistakes and make them part of the content themselves. So closing out the quality section for a starter kit here, use a decent microphone and set up basic lighting would be my first recommendation. Use the tools you have, push them further. Dive into any training you have, check out all the new features, see if any of it feels like it's a good fit for kind of helping improve what you're doing on a day-to-day. Keep it natural and avoid being slick unless that's what's being demanded of you. And plan what you want to say, but try to internalize it as much as possible because it'll make things come across a lot more naturally. From a tool standpoint, think Media, Wistia, Canva, and YouTube all have amazing training stuff in regards to lighting, audio recording, editing, the whole nine, because, you know, a lot of those are video platforms and they want you to hop on and produce more content for them. From an AV standpoint, and there's a lot of people who are going to have a lot of opinions on that, but on my side, Newer is a brand on Amazon that's pretty lo-fi, but gets the job done and is very cost effective and has a wide range of tools. And from a microphone standpoint, the Hollyland Lark M2 is like less than $100. If you buy it refurbished, plugs into your phone or computer, and just does a really good job of just narrowing in your audio to make it sound a lot better in regards to anything you might be shooting, knowing that lots of folks here probably do shoot a decent amount of content on their phone. And from a software standpoint, if you're getting into some deeper editing and looking for ways to kind of manipulate what you have, CapCut edits, iMovie, and VN Video Editor are totally fine. You don't need to buy something out of the Creative Suite to get some core edits done as part of producing something of quality. So the final of the three topics here is scaling. So assuming you're creating consistently, your quality is constantly improving, but now you want to ramp up how much you're making. To do this successfully, you need to either scale up your available resources or work more efficiently. One of those things has to happen. You can't scale to infinite growth with one person kind of handling the whole show. So the blank page is a total killer. I have been in more seemingly mind-numbing meetings where we go in with no agenda and a blank page of, hey, let's come up with ideas. And sometimes you tough through it, but it really doesn't help move things forward. So in your day-to-day, I'd recommend creating an idea bank, a little scratch file on your phone notes app, in the cloud, wherever you want it to be, where any idea, good, bad, dumb, something you saw that you found inspiring, jot it down. And then the good news is once it's on there, when you have your normal rhythm of how you're reviewing what content you want to be producing on a monthly basis, deciding what your next steps will be as you scale up, you can use that as a starting point, look at it and say, okay, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, I can riff off of this, and it just gets you to a much better starting place. Now note that some of that ideation, even as you start to use that list, is usually most helpful when you have some sort of collaborator. Not everybody in this room necessarily will. So if you don't have a collaborator, I honestly recommend firing up any AI tool's voice mode and just tell it what you're planning to do and just ask it its thoughts. Sometimes, and anybody here that's a developer knows the concept of rubber ducking, sometimes just talking to something out loud and telling it what you want to do or what problem you're having, you solve the problem on your own. You're able to better ideate where you want to be going. So talking to anything, even a robot, can potentially help you move things forward. When it comes to looking to scale up, bulk capturing your media is super important. One piece of content at a time will slow you down to a crawl. Plan to shoot photos or videos for multiple posts at the same time, using visual indicators, whether it's a dry erase board, a clapboard, whatever you have, help you know what footage is for what content. Because the last thing you want to do is shoot for an entire day for 15 videos and then have to sort through all that later. Capture B-roll though, whenever you're doing this bulk capture, because you wouldn't believe the number of times when you're going through the ideation phase where you're like, oh, I really want to do this content. And you realize, I don't really need new footage. If I just had something, I'm going to put a caption over top and some voiceover. Having footage of even the B-roll stuff of you, oh, hey, I'm behind the scenes setting this up, or just people talking before you're actually shooting the content, can be something worthwhile enough to put in the back of a video, put some stuff on top of, and hit the needs for what you're trying to communicate, which is a huge time saver as you're looking to scale. Longer form content, such as podcasts, interviews, or an explainer video or tutorial where you're going more in depth, can be cut into smaller bite-sized pieces for other platforms. An interesting kind of case study for this is if you think about YouTube Shorts, which is really blown up. Content creators on all channels have been flocking to it because it's become extremely popular to cut something down into a 30 or 60-second clip of like a greatest hit moment, put it out there, and it gets tremendous views and reach. And you can do that with your longer form content. So instead of worrying about plotting out, oh, we need to have 15 posts this month, it's like, oh, we can shoot this one long thing, and this can be our content for the next 2 months because of the substance we're going to have there. It's a little bit more unclear maybe of totally what you're going to get out of it at the end of the day, because sometimes if you're shooting longer form, you might be doing it more free form and just grabbing some of the greater pieces, let's say from a podcast, but it does help you kind of ramp things up a little bit more so because you have that content. But before cutting it down, also think about what mediums it could work in. Can it be remixed into a blog post, downloadable guide, a compilation, or even creating a paid ad out of it? Those are all possibilities if you have something that has a little bit more meat to it, where you can be a little bit more selective in how it gets sliced and diced to be used for other mediums. Once you have content out in the wild, so assuming we go back to our original consistency, you've been posting content, you know what's working a bit, and what people are really engaging with. Lean into the content that works. There are creators out there that have made their entire career on having one type of video that went viral, and they now recreate that ad nauseum, like 20 times a month. And you go on their profile and you're like, this kind of makes me feel a little bit ill. This was entertaining the first time, but now it's just a lot. And I hope this person's okay if this is their entire life. I remember this video of this guy where he's just dancing and a drone video just circles around him. That's it. And I'm like, you do this many times a month to just find random locations? But it's like, hey, I guess if it pays the bills, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, good on you, I guess, for finding something that works, monetizing it. But if you're thinking about scaling up, ideally you don't want to be coming up with 30 new ideas every month. You want to say, oh, we have this one concept that works really well. That's like a cornerstone piece of what we produce. So we're going to produce 5 more of those this month. We're going to cut it down the same way, which is a huge, tremendous time savings because you know the structure, you know the format, you know how to shoot it, and people know how to edit it on the back end as well. And also, because you know it works well, it will likely still have the same level of performance as you proceed forward. And you're like, oh, great, we're now producing things that we know are going to work. And if you are working on behalf of a client or your internal company, it's much easier to get buy-in on spending more time on stuff you can point to and say, this works. Now, AI tools can be helpful in getting some groundwork done for what you want to create. AI tools exist for automating edits and kind of doing some first pass of seeing how you might be able to remix or recut things, creating storyboards, mocking up visuals, creating voiceovers, fixing audio issues, and more. There's ethical considerations around all of that. Some of these tools are doing things that do replace actual people you could be hiring to do the work. They aren't always even necessarily doing a great job at it. So you do have to think back to how you want to represent yourself and how well it's helping. But when I went back to going that earlier when we killed off your excuses, from an AI standpoint, thinking about it in respect to being an assistant as a starting point of saying, what legwork can you do for me that I can build off of, I think is an okay way to think about it. And the final topic for talking about Scal is knowing that as you get deeper into this content hole, you may end up disliking some aspects of what you're doing and realize it's not a good fit for you. And that's totally fine. Not everybody is equipped to do everything in relation to content creation. These are going to be your opportunities to start to tap into outside resources. Whether it's helping with writing, content capture, editing, acting, pretty much anything you need, you could find somebody that could do that work for you, whether you're having somebody internally provide support or an outside group. We personally do work at the Martin Group on behalf of clients to support this all the time, where they just realize this is not a good fit for us, we're having capacity issues, we really just need to level up what we're doing, and we really think we could use that outside help. And sometimes people are honestly just have social media, as we like to refer to it, as proof of life, of like, yeah, we have it to show we're a company that exists. And it shows in what they're putting out there. But they know this could do more for our business, so can you help us? So as you start to kind of see the things that you don't like doing, outsource all the things that you hate and just say, hey, this is better for somebody else, and focus on the things that help you provide the most impact in moving forward. From a scale standpoint, thinking of a starter kit, start with an idea bank. Have that always rolling as you go. Honestly, that's something you could start before you're honestly even ready to scale, but is even more important as you get into this phase. Capture in bulk, cut down and remix. Try to leverage what you can. Creating something larger is much easier to reuse and repurpose down the road than creating something that's kind of in a tight little box. Lean into consistent content formats. You know it works. Why not keep going down that path? I will note, eventually, that content may stop working because you hit a certain amount of saturation. But while it's still working, keep leaning on it. And then finally, outsource what is not a good fit for you. So the things that you don't feel like are a right fit, things you don't want to be doing, have somebody else handle that so you can be happier about the work and focus on the things that are more important. So the tools to help with this, when you start scaling up, you have to think about media organization. How am I labeling? How am I organizing? Especially if you're shooting something long and cutting down or shooting B-roll, how do I get the stuff that would be really good and handy to have? Because as you're scaling up, no one person's going to know everything that you have in your content bank. So using a tool like Adobe Bridge, FileStage, Airtable can help with some of that organization. Those tools also, some of them have the ability to send out things for review and feedback, because if you're not the only one doing the work, you might be the final say as to whether something's ready to go live or not, and having a very concise way to collect feedback and get that back to the people that are assisting you is super important. From an editing standpoint, when we talk about scaling, CapCut, Descript, Veed, and Opus all have AI tools that can help you improve quality as well as kind of move things forward at a faster clip than you might be if you're doing things a little bit more manually in an editor like iMovie. One thing I did want to note at the very end there is Fiverr Go. So we talked about voiceovers, and voiceovers are a great tool when it comes to creating content online. AI voiceovers can do a really good job, but it is literally in a lot of cases, depending on platforms, stealing people's jobs. So Fiverr Go is an interesting concept where voice actors have created their own voice models, and you are actually paying through Fiverr a cut to that voice actor to generate voiceover with their voice. And the nice thing is, let's say if you're doing that a bunch and you really like this voice actor, you can also then just start to directly work with them. If it's not quite hitting the mark, or you have something custom you want to do, or you want to dive even deeper into it, which is super great. So we're now at the wrap up. 3 just quick beats before we close this out. What I presented is a possible path you could take. As you probably noted, all of those pieces may not apply to you, but I'm hoping some of those things feel like something you might be able to apply to whatever stage you might be in your content creation efforts. You should do what's right for you. Never feel like you got to follow the trends or some specific script of what everybody says you need to do to be successful in content creation. Don't let the excuses block you from what you want to achieve. Be honest about whether this is a priority and whether you're ready to kind of dive in and commit. Because sometimes those excuses are just reason to say, hey, now is not the time for me. I have other things I really want to focus on. And you are really all more than capable of doing this. As we noted, 24 years of content has been created since this event started till this talk started. So if that much video can be produced in that amount of time, anybody here can definitely produce content in a way that has some sort of impact. And if you're already creating content, you have the ability to do it with more consistency, a bit more quality, and scale things up as well on your side. But only do it if you're 100% committed and you feel like it has value for you where you want to be going. So thank you all. Website here, hellolevi.com. There's a button to download this entire deck if you want the list of tools or anything like that.